The chosen are called, crushed, then crowned. There comes a moment in life when everything begins to shift, not on the surface, where appearances stay polished and smiles remain rehearsed, but deep within, where the soul begins to stir and the heart starts to ache for something more. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a whisper, a strange dissatisfaction with the ordinary, a discomfort in the places that once felt like home, a subtle inner pull that tells you, you were not made for this world as it is. You were made for something greater, but that greatness will cost you everything. The ones who are chosen don't always know they're chosen at first. They are not born into spotlight or glory. In fact, they often come from broken places, from households where their voice was silenced, from environments that tried to convince them they were nothing, from losses that nearly crushed their will to live. And yet, something in them refuses to stay down. Something inside keeps rising, fragile, bruised, but still burning. That fire is the calling. And once it begins, you can't return to who you used to be. But here's what no one tells you. Being chosen is not glamorous. It's not about recognition or popularity. It's not about applause or influence. Being chosen is not a promotion. It's an invitation to die to your former self, to be emptied of ego, pride, and false security. It is to be called out of comfort, broken beyond recognition, and rebuilt by divine hands. You will walk through seasons of confusion where everything seems to fall apart. People will leave. Plans will fail. Doors will close. And in those dark moments, you'll question the very voice that called you in the first place. You'll say, God, if I'm chosen, why does it hurt so much? And the answer comes slowly, silently, painfully. Because you're being prepared for a crown, and no crown sits rightly upon an uncrushed spirit. This speech is not for the masses. It's not for the comfortable or the crowd pleasers. It's for those who have felt the crushing, for those who have walked through fire and are still unsure why they survived. It's for those who have been hidden, rejected, overlooked, and yet still sense that something sacred lives inside them. This is for the wounded warriors, the silent prophets, the misfits with vision, the outcasts with a calling. You are not broken for nothing. You are not hidden for no reason. The crushing has a purpose. And if you endure it, if you let the process do its holy work, the time will come when the same God who called you, who allowed the breaking, will also lift you. And when he does, the crown won't be a symbol of pride. It will be a reminder of the pain, the pruning, and the purpose that shaped you into who you were always meant to be. This is the journey of the chosen. The calling, when heaven interrupts. There is a mysterious moment in every chosen person's life, a moment that doesn't make sense in the natural, yet shifts everything in the spiritual. It is not always a thunderous voice from the heavens. Often, it's a subtle interruption, a divine disruption that doesn't knock politely, but crashes through the routine of life, turning your normal upside down. It doesn't come with clarity. In fact, it usually arrives wrapped in confusion. Things stop working the way they used to. The path you once walked so confidently becomes foggy. The places that once made you feel alive now feel hollow. People you trusted begin to feel distant. And though you can't explain it to anyone else, something inside of you knows. You've been called. It starts with an ache, a restlessness that refuses to be soothed. You begin to look around and feel like a stranger in your own life. You question why your heart no longer aligns with what others find fulfilling. You wonder why the things that bring them peace now only stir discomfort within you. That's not coincidence. That's calling. That's heaven interrupting earth, marking your soul for a mission that has nothing to do with fitting in and everything to do with being set apart. Those who are called don't usually feel qualified. In fact, they often feel the most broken, the most inadequate, the most unsure. But that's precisely why they're chosen. Because heaven isn't looking for polished perfection. Heaven is looking for willing vessels, flawed, yes, but open, not full of themselves, but empty enough to be filled with something greater. And so the calling rarely arrives during a time of strength. It comes during weakness. It meets you in the midnight hour when your tears outnumber your words. It finds you in frustration, in wilderness seasons, in the middle of unanswered prayers and shattered expectations. God does not call the ready. He calls the surrendered. And once the calling begins, life will never be the same. Because the calling always demands separation. You will be pulled away from crowds that once comforted you. You will begin to lose taste for conversations that go nowhere. You will feel yourself drifting from the familiar, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. When God calls you, he starts peeling away anything that would compete with his voice. Friends who were only attached to your past will fall away. Opportunities that would distract you from your assignment will dry up. What looks like rejection is actually redirection. And though it hurts, it is holy. The calling also stirs conflict within. Part of you wants to obey. Part of you wants to stay safe. You feel a war between who you were and who you're becoming. And the scariest part is, you can't go back. You've tasted something real, and no counterfeit can satisfy you anymore. But stepping forward means stepping into the unknown. There is no map for the chosen. There is only faith. You walk by obedience, not by sight. And it will cost you. It will cost your pride. It will cost your comfort. It may even cost your reputation. But what you gain, identity, clarity, purpose, divine alignment, is infinitely more valuable. The chosen are not called for status. They are called for service. You are not being summoned to shine. You are being summoned to submit. You are being invited into a higher way of living, not a higher position in society. This is not about you being elevated. It's about you being entrusted. Because to be called is to be commissioned. You're not just being pulled out. You're being sent forth. There is something that only you can carry. Something your pain has prepared you for. Something your past has shaped you to hold. And though the world may not understand it, and even you may not fully grasp it yet, God does. He knows what he put inside you. He knows what he's calling forth. And so, in this first stage, the calling, you will feel the tension of transition. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you will become. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely. But it's necessary. Because heaven has to separate you before it can elevate you. God must isolate you before he can entrust you. You must be emptied of the noise so you can hear his whisper. And the only way to do that is to follow, even when the path is unclear. Even when the destination is unknown. Even when all you have is a word and a whisper. If you've been feeling out of place, if you've been sensing something shifting but can't put it into words, you're not crazy. You're being called. If your spirit no longer feels at home in places where your body still resides, that's not dysfunction. It's divine dislocation. God is shaking you loose from where you were so you can step into who you're meant to become. Don't fight the pull. Don't cling to what's dying. Don't silence the voice. Let heaven interrupt you. Let the divine disruption take its course. Because on the other side of obedience is a purpose greater than anything you could imagine. You were not born to blend in. You were not created to be average. The very discomfort you feel is proof that you were not designed for the ordinary. You were made for impact. And the calling is the first step in unlocking it. So when the shift begins, when the voice whispers, when the doors close, when the restlessness won't go away, pay attention. Because that's not coincidence. That's not just emotion. That's the voice of heaven saying, it's time. You've been called. Now comes the crushing. The crushing, broken to be rebuilt. After the calling comes the crushing. And this is the part no one prays for. No one dreams of. No one volunteers for. This is the part where the promise looks like a lie, where the path feels like punishment, and where the one who was called begins to wonder if the calling was even real. Because the crushing doesn't come gently. It comes like a storm that won't pass, a silence that won't break, a wound that refuses to heal. It feels like betrayal. It feels like abandonment. It feels like God changed his mind. But he didn't. He's just beginning his real work. You see, when God calls you, he must also prepare you. And preparation always includes pressure. He cannot place glory upon an untested vessel. He cannot pour divine weight into a heart still full of ego. So he begins the sacred process of stripping. And this is where you start to lose things you thought you couldn't live without. Friendships, careers, opportunities, dreams, even parts of yourself. You start to watch life unravel. And it doesn't make sense. God, I said yes. You cry? I answered your call. Why does it feel like everything is falling apart? But what's falling apart isn't your destiny. It's your dependency on everything that was never meant to carry you. The crushing is not punishment. It is purification. It is the pressing that turns olives into oil. It is the grinding that turns grain into bread. It is the cutting that turns a stone into a jewel. And yes, it hurts. You will weep. You will wrestle. You will wonder if you're strong enough to endure it. But in the crushing, God is not trying to kill you. He's trying to reveal you. The real you. The you that's been buried beneath fear, pride, insecurity, and shame. the you that the world tried to bury, the you that heaven always knew was there. During the crushing, people may walk away. They'll say you've changed. They won't understand your silence. They won't recognize your brokenness. They may even label it weakness. But don't let their misunderstanding make you miss the miracle. Because in heaven's eyes, your breaking is not failure, it's formation. You are not being destroyed. You are being redefined. You are not being punished. You are being purified. You are not being buried. You are being planted. But the crushing is lonely. It strips you of all the familiar. It places you in wilderness spaces where your prayers feel like echoes, where the heavens go quiet, where comfort is nowhere to be found. This is when you start to question everything. This is when your faith is no longer a concept. It becomes a lifeline. You either cling to God or collapse. And for a while, collapsing will feel easier. You'll want to give up, to walk away, to go back to the life you had before the calling. But you can't, because even though everything around you is falling apart, something within you refuses to quit. That's the mark of the chosen. Not perfection, but persistence. Not power, but surrender. The crushing doesn't remove the call, it deepens it. It doesn't disqualify you, it sanctifies you. It doesn't end your story, it rewrites it. God uses crushing seasons to create spiritual muscle. Because you cannot carry a crown if you cannot first carry a cross. You cannot speak with power if you have not suffered with purpose. You cannot guide others through pain if you've never learned to bleed with grace. The crushing gives you depth. It gives you discernment. It gives you authority. Not the kind that comes from titles or degrees, but the kind that can only come from scars. Real authority doesn't come from platforms. It comes from pain endured in private. And when you've been through the crushing, you don't just speak truth, you carry it. But here's the hard truth. Some of the most sacred things God will ever do in you will feel, at first, like abandonment. He will allow you to be shattered. Not because he's cruel, but because he sees the version of you that even you don't believe exists yet. He sees the purity on the other side of the pain. He sees the power that's being forged in the fire. And he will not rescue you prematurely. Because if he does, he'll interrupt the process that's making you holy. So don't fight the crushing. Don't curse it. Don't run from it. Let it do its work. Let it strip away the shallow layers. Let it destroy the illusions. Let it bring you to the end of yourself. Because it is at the end of yourself that God begins to rebuild you. When the crushing is complete, you will not be who you once were. And that's the point. The old you, the one who needed approval, the one who lived for validation, the one who feared rejection, that version of you won't survive the pressing. What will emerge is someone new, someone unshakable, someone purified, someone with vision, someone who doesn't need the world's applause to feel valuable. Someone who has been tested in the dark and can now carry light without arrogance. Someone who can lead without ego, love without condition, and serve without needing recognition. You were called, but to be crowned, you must be crushed. And when you're being crushed, it feels like the end. But in God's kingdom, it's only the middle. Because the next stage is not immediate glory, it's quiet preparation. It's not elevation, it's isolation. You've been crushed. Now comes the waiting. The waiting, hidden but not forgotten. After the calling and the crushing comes a season that feels even more confusing, even more disorienting. The waiting. If the crushing breaks your pride, the waiting breaks your timeline. And this is where many lose heart. Not because they weren't called, not because they weren't willing to endure the pain, but because they couldn't survive the silence. It is one thing to suffer when you can still feel fire and passion pushing you forward. It is another thing entirely to sit in the shadows, day after day, with no applause, no explanation, no end in sight. Waiting is not passive. It is warfare. It is where your faith is tested not by fire, but by delay. And that delay will make you question everything. You'll look around and see others rising, others celebrated, others chosen, while you remain hidden, overlooked, forgotten. It will feel like the world moved on without you, like your obedience went unnoticed, like your suffering didn't matter. And yet, God is not absent in the waiting. He is present, just not loud. He is working, just not in ways you can measure. The wilderness is not a punishment. It is a classroom. And the waiting is not wasted time. It is divine preparation. You are not being delayed. You are being developed. Because what God is building in you requires silence, solitude, and stillness. The crown you are meant to carry cannot be placed on a head that still bows to impatience. So he hides you, not to shame you, not to mock you, but to strengthen you, to anchor you, to make sure that when the light does find you, it will not destroy you. In the waiting, you learn to trust without evidence, to believe without affirmation, to walk without visibility. You learn to love God for who He is, not just for what He does. You stop performing. You stop striving. You stop needing external validation to feel internally grounded. And this is the most powerful transformation of all, not what happens to you, but what happens in you. Because if the enemy cannot break your spirit in the crushing, he will try to wear it down in the waiting. He will whisper lies. You missed it. You were never really chosen. You're not enough. But those lies lose their grip when you're rooted in truth. And waiting reveals whether your roots go deep. David was anointed as king, but he went back to tending sheep. Joseph had dreams of leadership, but he was thrown into a pit and later a prison. Jesus was baptized and declared beloved, only to be led by the Spirit into the wilderness for 40 days. Do not mistake hiddenness for abandonment. Do not confuse stillness with stagnation. God always prepares His vessels in secret. What feels like delay is divine alignment. What feels like obscurity is sacred protection. And yes, it will hurt. Waiting always does. The hardest thing is not the calling or even the crushing. It's the questions that rise during the waiting. Why is it taking so long? Did I do something wrong? Has God forgotten me? But heaven has never once forgotten what it has marked. Your life has a divine timestamp. Your assignment is not late. Your crown is not lost. It is simply not yet. And if you can embrace the wait, if you can worship while it feels like nothing is happening, if you can keep showing up even when it seems no one sees you, you will emerge not just ready, but steady. You will rise not just with power, but with purpose. Because something happens in the stillness that cannot happen in the storm. In the silence, your ears begin to tune to God's voice more clearly. In the absence of noise, you begin to recognize your own patterns, your own dependencies, your own false identities that needed to fall away. The waiting strips you of illusion. It humbles you, refines you. It reveals who you are when there is no audience, no stage, no reward, just you and your Creator. And that, my friend, is where real strength is born. If you are in the waiting, don't rush it. Don't fight it. Lean in. Let it shape you. Let it cleanse your motives. Let it reveal your real priorities. You will come out of this season with more than a crown. You will come out with character. Because when God finally lifts you, when the doors open, when the time comes for you to step forward, you won't just be seen. You'll be ready. And readiness is not about skill. It's about surrender. It's about becoming someone who can carry the weight of glory without using it to glorify yourself. The waiting teaches you what you couldn't learn in the crushing, how to endure in silence, how to remain faithful when there's nothing to prove, how to be hidden, but not bitter, delayed, but not discouraged, set apart, but still anchored in grace. And when the waiting ends, and it will, you will not be the same. You will be deeper, stronger, quieter, perhaps, but infinitely more powerful. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared in private for a purpose that will be revealed in public. But the foundation must be strong. The roots must go deep. The oil you carry must be pressed and purified, or the crown will crush you instead of elevating you. So wait well, serve well, heal well, stay faithful in the shadows, because the light is coming. Your time is coming. And when it arrives, you will not have to force it, fake it, or fight for it. You will simply walk into what has already been prepared for you. You've been called. You've been crushed. You've been waiting. Now, you are ready to be crowned. The crowning, glory after the crushing. And then, one day, often when you least expect it, the door opens. Not a door you forced open. Not a stage you climbed onto by self-promotion. Not a crown you chased. But a divine appointment. Something only God could orchestrate. After the calling, after the crushing, after the silence of the waiting, there it is. The moment when heaven says, now. You may not feel ready. You may still carry the limp from the crushing. You may still feel the echoes of the cave, the shadows of the wilderness. But God knows. He knows you've been through the fire and came out without the smell of smoke. He knows you've been faithful in obscurity. He knows you said yes when no one was watching. And now it's time. But hear me clearly. The crown is not a trophy. It's a tool. It is not a reward for survival. It is a responsibility for service. To be crowned is not to be lifted above people, but to be entrusted to carry them. It is not to rule over others, but to kneel lower in humility, knowing the weight you bear has nothing to do with your worthiness and everything to do with God's mercy. You don't wear the crown to parade your glory. You wear it to reflect His. When you are finally crowned, you carry scars beneath it. Scars from wounds that no one else saw. Scars from prayers that went unanswered. Scars from crushing seasons that no one applauded. And those scars become your testimony. They keep you grounded. They keep you real. They remind you that the crown did not come cheap. It was not bought with ease. It was bought with tears, sleepless nights, broken dreams, and brutal surrender. And it changes how you lead. You don't lead with pride. You lead with compassion. You don't speak from theory. You speak from pain. You don't serve from superiority. You serve from empathy. Because you remember the pit. You remember the silence. You remember how it felt to be broken, hidden, and unsure. And now that you've been lifted, you don't forget those still in the fire. You reach back. You build bridges. You become a shelter for others in the storm you once survived. This is the beauty of the crown. It's not about rising above. It's about being trusted to go deeper into the lives of others. God doesn't crown you to elevate your ego. He crowns you to extend His kingdom. And the true sign that you've been crowned by God is not how high you go, but how low you're willing to bow. How willingly you wash the feet of those you once envied. How quickly you forgive those who try to break you. How graciously you handle praise because you've been trained in silence. There's a heaviness to the crown, but you're built for it now. Because the crushing crushed your pride. The waiting stretched your patience. And now, you no longer depend on applause to validate your anointing. You know who you are. You know who sent you. And that confidence can't be shaken by critics, by setbacks, or even by failure. You are anchored. You are rooted. And you wear the crown with reverence, not arrogance. The world might see the crowning as success. They might see the platform, the promotion, the influence. But you know better. You know that the real reward wasn't the crown. It was who you became in the process. It was the deep intimacy you built with God in the dark. It was the endurance that formed when no one cheered. It was the transformation that took place when all you had was His voice and your yes. You wear the crown for those still in the crushing. You wear it for those still in the cave. You wear it not as a prize, but as proof that resurrection is real, that ashes can become beauty, that the rejected can rise, that the broken can be trusted, that silence does not mean God is absent, it means He is working. The crowning is the final chapter of a story the world didn't see. They didn't see the breakdowns, the betrayal, the loneliness. They didn't see the nights you wanted to quit, the days you begged God for relief. But heaven saw. And heaven rewarded not just your endurance, but your obedience. Not your strength, but your surrender. Not your charisma, but your character. And now, you walk differently. Not because you're better, but because you're burdened. Not because you're above others, but because you're assigned. You walk like someone who has been through something. Someone who's been with God. And that presence, that quiet, unshakable authority, that's what distinguishes the crowned from the crowd. That's what makes the chosen visible. Not their fame, but their fragrance. The aroma of someone who has died to themselves and been raised in divine timing. You didn't earn the crown. You were entrusted with it. And now, you carry it with care. You lead with love. You speak with fire. You serve with purpose. You live not to be seen, but to reveal the one who saw you when no one else did. So, to those who have been called, crushed, and crowned, never forget the journey. Never despise the process. Wear your crown, not as a sign that you've arrived, but as a reminder that you survived. And may your life always point back to the God who wrote the story no one else could see. The world may celebrate your crowning, but heaven celebrates your character. You are chosen. You were crushed. And now, finally, you are crowned. Walk worthy.